ear training. No matter what kind of musician are you, if you're just gonna play songs that are pre-written, compose music, or just improvise, being able to understand what you're hearing when you're listening to music and translate that to your playing is a crucial skill that every musician should have. For most of us, this is not gonna be easy to achieve. Ear training is about a practice that makes you internalize musical patterns so you can listen to music, understand what's going on, and translate that to your playing. In this video, I'm gonna talk about how musical perception works. When we listen to music, whether we are a trained musician or just someone that listens to music, there is some psychological effects that are at work. In order to understand how to analyze the music we're listening to by ear, we need to understand how those psychological effects work and how we can use them in order to train and memorize musical patterns and being able to easily play them on our instrument. I'm also gonna explain why some methods are just not effective. Unfortunately, some methods that are very widely spread that I've been trying to practice with for years, and I've been very frustrated because they just yield no results. So just stick to the end of the video. I promise that I'm gonna cover all the basics you need to know in order to practice effectively and get results fast. For me, I've been practicing for years with no results. Once I started practicing properly with the method I'm gonna explain to you now, I just instantly got better, instantly saw more results than I ever saw before. So this is very exciting. I've been meaning to do this video for a while, so keep with me. I'm gonna explain everything, and I'm also gonna show you some very cool tool you can use to practice. Alright, so for most of us, musical pitch is something that we perceive relatively. Alright, that means that I can remember this melody. I can remember this is the Beethoven 5th Symphony, but I can also identify it if I play it here. So we understand that the absolute pitch in which we're playing, it doesn't really play a role in our musical perception. So the method we need to use is a method that incorporates identification of something that's relative to something. So the most intuitive way of ear training is the interval method. So interval is just the distance between two notes, right? So the interval method means, all right, so we have 12 notes in our Western equal temperament system, right? So that means we have 12 intervals, basically, we need to remember, so we can maybe remember how each of them sounds like, for example, and in that way we may be able to pick up a melody and try to analyze one by one how this works, like how the melody is built with using intervals. So this is what I've tried to use. So you may know that we have the 12 intervals and we can remember the sounds of each one. And not only this is very difficult, even if you can identify all the intervals ascending and descending, you will still not be able to identify melodies, at least not easily. And the reason for that is that in remembering the intervals, you usually try to memorize a specific musical context in which they appear. But in reality, the same interval, it can appear in different contexts and it can be perceived very, very differently. Psychologically, I mean, like mathematically it's the same, but the way we perceive it, the way we feel it is different based on the context. So it's very, very hard to figure out a melody just by analyzing the intervals. Alright, so we understand this is not a good method, and I think that if you've been practicing with this method for a long time, you might have noticed that it's not yielding results, and you might have thought, wait, maybe is this a problem with me? Maybe I'm not good enough. It's just, this doesn't work. So bear with me, I will explain a much better method. So the other thing we need to understand about music is that it's not built around random notes. It's not built about random intervals. It's actually built around the concept of tension and release. So for example, tension and release. So you can already feel, even if you're not musically trained, that this wants to go somewhere. This is tense, and this is home. This is a release. So what makes something feels tense and what makes something feels resolved? The way to explain it is to understand the tonal framework. So if you have studied a bit of music theory, you may know the term tonic or tonality. So the concept of tonality is that you have a specific pitch. So for example, this pitch could be C. It could be any pitch, but let's say it's C. All right? This pitch will be perceived as the home note, as the most relaxed note. All right? The other pitches are coming from the scale. For example, let's say you're using the C major scale. So this is going to be those notes. So some of the notes of the scale, they all relate to the same tonic, the same home key that will feel the most resolves. So every note in this is going to have a different tension. So for example, if you know this is C, and as we said, we're talking about relative pitch, so you're going to have some starting ground to work with. This is C, all right? And this is the key we're in. We're in C major, all right? Now I play this note. You can feel it wants to go somewhere. It wants to go here. All right? Let's make another example. So I'm gonna play a few chords. So these chords are just gonna align your ears to hear this pitch is the home key. It goes like this. We are home. We can finish. Like another way to think about it is, can you end the melody here? Does this feel resolved? It does, certainly. But if I do this and then play this note, alright, it wants to go somewhere. So this is the most important thing we need to understand when it comes to tonality and with relative pitch perception. Alright, so now that we understand the basic idea, let's talk a little bit about the theory you need to understand before we really start practicing. So, today we're gonna talk about the major scale, and this method actually works with any scale, but this is the most simple and the easiest to understand, so it's better to start with this scale. So, the major scale contains 7 notes, and you can build the major scale over every note. So if we want a major scale based on C, we will start with a C pitch and we go D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So we're not gonna work too much about building scales in this video, but you should know that in order for this method to be effective, you have to know how to play all keys in your instrument. What we're gonna learn though, is we're gonna learn to identify the scale degree in the scale. So the scale degree is basically how far away is the note from the tonic. So this is the tonic, all right? This is scale degree 1. This is the tonic. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1, all right? So a very common way of teaching it, it's what's called the movable do solfege system. So the movable do solfege system is just a fancy way of assigning a different syllable for every note, so it's easier to sing. So do is always going to be the first degree, re is going to be the second degree, mi is the third, fa is the fourth, sol is the fifth, la is the sixth, and ti is the seventh. Alright? It goes like this. Do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Now before we move on, just a quick clarification, because this is the source of confusion for many people. So actually in some countries they use the solfege as a different name for the notes. So C is do, D is re, and so on. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is using the movable do. That means the do always assumes the first degree of the scale. So for example, if I'm gonna play the E flat major scale, it's gonna have E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. I'm still gonna sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And this is very important because as we practice, we're gonna intuitively learn the sound of the scale degrees. Because as we said, this is the way we perceive the music. We don't perceive this as E flat. We perceive it as the tonic. We perceive it as another name, do. All right. This is very important thing to understand. If this is confusing for you, you can also sing numbers. So you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. In this video, I'm just gonna use the solfege system because I feel like it's the most comfortable to sing and I just like it better. So this is what I'm gonna do. Again, you can use the numbers if you prefer. So now that we got the theory out of the way, let's start practicing. So how does it work? The first and most important step toward effective ear training is to internalize the sound of the scale degrees. So when you're listening to a note in context, you can easily understand, wait, this is the third degree, this is the fourth degree, this is the second degree. How do we do that? So as I explained, every scale degree has its own sound, has its own feeling. That is actually best described by matters of resolution or tension. So it's not just resolved versus tense. We have different types of tensions, different types of resolution, different types of harmonies. Before we start practicing though, something very important I have to say. In order to effectively train your ear, you don't have to only listen, you have to sing. This is the same as learning language. You cannot just read it, you cannot just listen to it. You have to speak it. Both directions are important for effective ear training. So even if you're not a singer, even if you think your voice is not pretty, you have to sing, all right? So bear with me, try to be in a room where you can sing. So we are gonna practice this together, okay? So the first exercise in order to conceptualize and remember the sound of the scale degrees is going to be singing the scale, all right? And we are also going to listen for a drone, which is like a bass sound that always persists, that is going to play the tonic. This is gonna help us feel the tonic always and feel the tension that is created by some of the notes versus the harmony or the resolution of some of the notes. So I'm just gonna show you how this is gonna sound like and you can practice it alone. I'm also gonna post a link to the drone sounds of every key so you can practice in the key you feel comfortable with. You can practice in different keys, but the exercise is the same for every key. Okay, so this is the drone sound displaying the tonic. Do. And when you're starting out, you might need to play the notes while you sing just to make sure that you're playing the right notes. So I'm gonna play the C major scale because this is the C drone. Alright? And we're just gonna do this together very, very slowly. Try to feel every note. And I'm gonna try to talk a little bit about how every note feels to me. So maybe that's gonna help you remember the feeling of the note and remember the sound of it. So we're gonna start with the tonic. Do. This is very meditative, this is very stable. This is the home key do. It's the same note you are listening to in the drone. Now the second note, re. You can really feel the tension. You can feel it wanting to go down back to do. Re do. Now the third note is mi. Now mi is the third above do, so it's very harmonic. It feels like it works together in harmony with the drone. Mi. Fa. No, fa is one of the most difficult notes to remember. It's quite tense, not as tense as re, but it has a feeling that it wants to go somewhere. It has a feeling that it's not happy where it is. Fa. Next is sol. Sol. And sol is actually the most relaxed notes after do. It's very harmonious with do. Sol. Next is also harmonious with the tonic. It also feels quite in harmony, but not as much, and also it has a feeling that it wants to go up. La, ti, do, la. And then the most tense note in the scale is T. This is a leading tone back to do, and it's a leading tone in a half a step, so it's very, very tense. T. You can feel the tension, it wanna go up, back to do. So this is the first exercise. You can do it with the drones. If you feel like you're getting better, you can do it without, but when you're starting out, it's very, very recommended to use the drone, because it's gonna help you remember the tension of every note. All right, so try to do it going up and going down the scale. Do it very, very slowly. Try to feel the feeling of each note. All right, try to internalize that feeling so you can bring it up in memory. Okay, now when you feel like you remember the notes, you can try to sing it and then see if you are correct. For example, this is the tonic. Let's say I want to do mi. So mi, I can already remember how it sounds like. Let's say I want to do la. La. See, I already remember the sounds of the notes. This is where you're aiming for. You're aiming for remembering the sounds so you can recall them basically on will. So this is not something that's gonna come very easily. It's gonna take time to practice this, but it's a very, very important skill. Now another thing you can do to try to remember the sound of the notes is sing a note and then resolve it back to the nearest tonic. What do I mean by that? For example, if I'm trying to practice mi, all right? Mi, I'm going down the scale until I get to do. Mi, re, do. Or for example, if I want to go fa, fa, mi, re, do. This is gonna help you feel how far away you are from the tonic. This is also something you can do with the drone. This is something that's gonna be, it's not a hard exercise. You can do it note by note basis, and it's a very good initial step in order to internalize the feeling of the scale degrees. So besides singing the scales and different scale degrees with the drone, another good exercise you can do is the scale patterns. This is something that's gonna help us remember the scale, the sound of the scale, to be intimate with it, to kind of play with different patterns that might rise up in real music. Okay, so the way it works, I'm just gonna play the drone again, so it's gonna be easier for you to hear it. Okay, so this is do. Do. What we're going to do, we're gonna pick up a simple pattern. For example, do, re, mi, and we're gonna repeat it up to scale in sequences. So it's gonna be do, re, mi, fa, sol, alright, and so on. Try to sing with me. Let's do it from the beginning, okay? I'm gonna put the notes on the screen so it's gonna be easier for you to follow, okay? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re, do. And then you can do the same thing descending. It's gonna go like this. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, ti, do. Now if you're feeling more confident, you can try to do it without playing. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, and so on. Alright? Another pattern you can do, you can go 3 steps. You can do do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. And you can also do just thirds. It's gonna sound like this. Do, mi, re, fa, mi, sol, fa, la, sol, ti. These are very, very good exercises to help you develop the sense of scale, the sense of the notes in the scale. If you feel like it's getting easier, you're feeling confident, now it's time to test your abilities. I'm gonna put a link to some exercise sheets. They're just gonna have basically a sight reading exercise. I'm not gonna do this with sheet music because I know that not everyone knows how to read it. I'm just gonna put the name of the scale degrees and you're gonna have to sync them in order. You don't have to do that with a specific time in mind. Just take as much time as you need to figure out each note, to remember how it sounds like. Initially practice with a drone. When you get more confident, you could practice without. Basically, after you sing it, just try to see if you're correct by playing the note on your instrument. Again, you can do that using any key. You don't have to use the C major scale as I use now. You can use any key. You just need to know how to play it and how to translate the scale degrees to notes. This is something you should be able to do on your instrument. Now, the second exercise you can do to test your abilities is listening to a note and figuring out what scale degree it is. So ideally, you already have a sense of what each scale degree sounds like. So if you listen to one, you can try maybe to sing it, see how it feels like. Maybe you can try to resolve it back to the tonic to count how many steps it has, to feel like, does it have tension? Does it feel resolved? What kind of note it may be? All right, and then try to figure out what note this is. And best way to practice with it is actually with an open source free application called OpenEar. OpenEar is an open source project, which means it's not only free, it will always be free, and it's a community driven project. So if you have some programming skills, you can also contribute to the code base and try to add more features. Now I'm going to show you how to use this app to practice what I showed you today, and this is a very, very important first step in your your training journey. Alright, so this is OpenEar. This is how the app looks like when you first open it. As you can see, we have a couple of options of exercises we can use. We're gonna just focus on the first one in this lesson. So I'm gonna open it and it's gonna play the questions. Alright, so as you can see, it played a couple of chords just to give us a sense of the key center. Let's have a listen again. So I'm singing it. This is something that's gonna help you. So I feel like this note wants to move down by one step. So I re, do. So then this is the second degree probably. And I was correct. And you can also see that the app, in order to help me remember the sound, it will play the resolution. It will play the note down. Let's see another example. So I feel like this is the third degree. Alright, so let's take a look about other options that you might want to know about. So I can click the setting button, and one thing that I really want to change is the display mode. Here you can see we can choose numbers. That is the default. I like to use the movable do solfege system, so you can see it's gonna use. So you can see now it's gonna use the solfege names of the notes. You can choose whatever you prefer. I can also choose what scale degrees I want to practice. So for beginners, I really recommend just sticking with do, re, mi. Then if you feel comfortable, go to do, re, mi, fa, sol, degrees 1 to 5. Then you can practice the upper scale, which is sol, la, ti, do, and then you can just do all of them. So this is the major scale. As you can see, you have more options. You have ra, me, fi, le, te. This is just notes that are outside of the scale, and you can also use them to create a different kind of scale. So for example, this is a minor scale. This is not something we're gonna do for this tutorial. Maybe later I'll make more videos about other scales. So this is the very important settings. Another thing you may know about is the play resolution. If you turn it off, it's not gonna play the resolution of the note. Another thing, always play cadence. The couple of chords that he plays in the beginning to give you the sense of key. This is the cadence. Alright, if you feel like this is too annoying and you remember where the tonic is, you can always find it, you can sing it, you can feel it. You can turn it off. I use only on repeat. So like if I want a reminder of where the tonic is, I can always select repeat button and it's gonna replay it. There are more options here, like autoplay, next question. This is pretty straightforward. I'm not gonna go over all of them. Once you get more comfortable, you can also increase the number of notes. So now it has like melodic dictation of random notes. Another thing you might want to know is that it tells you the key at the top. So if you want the drone to practice with, I can actually turn it up right now. So here's the drone. So this is gonna help me feel the notes. Alright, so this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and you learned a few things. If you want to learn more about hear training, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button. I'm going to make more videos, for example, about identifying chord progressions, which is a very hot topic, and also other various tips that I found very, very useful and life-changing. So be sure to stay in touch. Links to the app in the description. See you next time. Bye.